All right, we are back. Welcome to the Constantly Consistent podcast. I have my friend and guest here, Michael Atkinson, out in Nevada, San Francisco. He's the business owner, and I'm assuming one of the head coaches there at his affiliate. And we have met through a mutual friend and colleague, Michael Fitzgerald. And I met Michael, not Michael Fitzgerald, through our shared interest in knowledge and wanting to learn, and our friendship with Michael. And we just wrapped up a 6-week seminar. Michael's first time doing it, the Fitness Coach Mastery. We learned a ton. And
Mhm.
Michael here, Atkinson, said, we should hop on a podcast and have a chat. And I was like, actually, I'm going to take you up on that. And, he's become a friend, and we haven't met in person, but hopefully next week we meet. And I think Michael brings a lot of interesting perspectives into the CrossFit world. And as someone like myself who maybe designs program from like an individual design lens, but also really likes and appreciates and values CrossFit and how we can blend the world. And we're also going to talk about what we learned from the course and how Michael runs his business, and also how it's changed his parenting. So, Michael, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show. And I always like to start with how did you get into CrossFit?
Yeah, thank you, Austin. It's an honor to be here. I actually got into CrossFit when I was in a recovery program. So when I was younger and got into a lot of trouble, I was involved with gangs and substance abuse. And I got sent to this program in my early 20s. I was actually 21 and went through the program, graduated from the program. Working out was a huge part of it, and
Hmm.
self-development in general. And about 2.5, 3 years in, we got tickets to a regionals event. We used to do we used to take the other guys to events and just see what's out there, because most of us came from a background where we didn't really have anything positive like that, right?
Hmm.
And, so regionals was kind of my first exposure to CrossFit, and I was just blown away by the community and how nice everyone was.
Yeah.
And also, just seeing the competitors on the floor and just being like, wow, like these guys are like badass. And, I was trying to figure out, okay, if I'm not going to be a criminal anymore, if I'm going to really change my life, like what am I going to do, and how, what can I replace that with? Because it's hard to go from something being your whole like world, biopsychosocial,
Hmm.
into having nothing. And so I was like, I think I'm going to do that. And that's kind of how I got into CrossFit. I started looking up workouts on .com and doing them at the program. And eventually CrossFit HQ actually sponsored me to get my level 1 so we could start a program within the
Wow.
program. Yeah. And so like that was like my exposure to CrossFit. And I kept doing that for a long time. I worked for the program. I got to running groups for the program. It was a really awesome place. I want to give a shout out to Jericho Project, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. And at some point, I decided to leave the program because one of the things that I've always dreamed about is having a family. Yeah, I love it's a very funny story, but the director of the program, he showed us a video of a women's regional event, and we were watching it one day on the big screen in the program, and he was like, "Yeah, why don't you guys try to date someone like that instead of the hood rats you're used to?"
I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, "But you gotta be able to do that stuff, right?" And I was like, "Huh?" And so, like, that's kinda what it's funny, right? That's, like, what motivated me to start down that path.
Sure.
Yeah, and eventually I ended up in Nevada, and this was back in 2015. There was 3 affiliates in town, and I ended up going to CrossFit. I went to each one and had my level 1, so I was trying to intern. And at CrossFit Nevada, the head coach at the time, Gilly, she actually told me that she would take me in if she could right then and there, but she wasn't the owner, and I would have to meet Andy Boone, who is the owner. And so I met him. We sat on the couches that we still have in the lobby, and he asked me like pretty much my life story. And I was just watching him, and he asked for more and more details. And I'm like, okay, he's either gonna really like me or he's gonna be like, yeah, you gotta go. And I was actually the former, and he invited me in. And he asked me what was more important, to become a coach or to be an athlete. And I told him both, because I think I want to be a greater coach long term. But in order to be a great coach, I think you have to understand what it's like to be an athlete somewhat.
Hmm.
And so I started just taking class every day, and I treated it kind of like a job. I was going to school for kinesiology at a community college out here, and working at a restaurant. It's very popular. Maybe we should go to that one when you come out. It's called Soul Food.
All right.
Yeah, and I just started, like, looking for I started training, friends in the parking lot at the college and just looking for any job opportunities. I worked at Marin Heavy Athletics, which is a local Olympic weightlifting gym, run by a really good coach named Yasha. Also, I worked at CrossFit Marin, which is also called The Cave, which is, like, the oldest CrossFit affiliate out here, which is still going, and so I was just getting a lot of exposure and experience, and I had this goal of wanting to compete at regionals, and so I decided to drop out of college so I could train more.
Okay.
I hired, Brianna Lamb at Revival Strength, when
Mm-hmm.
she worked there, and so I trained with her. She was my first individual coach, for a year of individual design.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, coming from my background, it was a very I think about this all the time because now as a business owner, one of our goals at our gym is to be able to serve people from different walks of life, and
Sure.
I had never hired or spent that much money on a coach in my life. I think back then it was only 235. I say only because
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
just
like
much
right now
more.
it's way more expensive.
Yeah.
But back then, that was a lot, and I was like, "Holy
Yeah.
cow, what am I doing?" But I was, like, betting on myself, and during the course of that year, it was amazing because we dialed in my nutrition, I was doing my map work on the bike,
Yeah. Familiar.
and, I'm, like, a pretty strong guy, but endurance has always been the thing that I have to work on to keep,
Yeah.
and uh, I started dating my wife. I was, like, in the best shape of my life, and towards the end of my year with her, I realized I actually didn't wanna compete because I didn't wanna spend that much time in the gym working
Yeah.
out, and I
It's a
actually
job.
wanted to yeah, it's a job, and I wanted to develop as a coach more, and I also had started asking Andy if I could help him out with, more gym tasks. I was like, "Hey, like, does this need to get done? Who's doing this?" And so I just kinda accumulated responsibility. Around 2019, he told me that he was, thinking about retiring, and, he offered to sell the gym to me, and
Wow.
yeah, that's kinda how I became the owner of CrossFit Nevada.
Well, that was gonna be my follow-up question was how you open your gym, but that's a great story. Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't know much about that, but,
Mhm.
it makes sense. It makes sense. When you first took CrossFit, that was
Mhm.
around 2015, or was that even earlier? Sorry if I misheard that.
When I first did CrossFit?
Yeah,
Officially, like, taking a class in affiliate 2015, on my own,
2015.
just looking up workouts, like, 2014. Yeah,
Yeah,
before then, I was doing at our program, we had a lot of machines and a lot of free
yeah.
weights, but we did, like, traditional routines,
Yeah,
so that was,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
my
of
first
course.
exposure. Yeah.
Sweet, man. Well,
Mhm.
and also thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, happy
I'm
to.
sure a lot of people will resonate with that, and,
Mhm,
I have a different background than you, of course, but I
mhm,
think you and I love CrossFit and training so much is because it was really pivotal in my life as well, and when I switched careers so this is my 3rd career. My first
wow.
career I'm 32, so my first career was in corporate
Mhm,
America. I was working in HR, which I liked,
mhm,
but it just kind of, wasn't my passion, and,
mhm.
after that, I was always coaching and teaching yoga and running, like, those were my
Oh,
fitness
cool.
hobbies, and I did
Yeah.
CrossFit as a hobby back then, but it was never, like, this idea, like, I would coach,
Mhm,
and COVID happened, I lost my job, and then I
mhm,
went into I taught yoga full time for about a year and a half, and then that actually went fairly well, but it felt like something was missing, and then during
mhm,
that time, similar to your story, I was hanging out at the gym I'm at now, Hudson River Athletics, shout out to
mhm,
Jay, and we would just work out together and just do WODs, and I had a lot of free time, and so, like, he showed me what mayhem I knew what mayhem was, but, like, they had this
mhm.
competitor track, and then I started competing like, doing competitive CrossFit, and I was like, "God, I really like this CrossFit stuff more than I thought."
Yeah.
And I asked him kinda like, "If I wanted to be a coach, how do I do that?" And
Mhm.
similar parallels to your story, he just kind of pushed me in the direction of OPEC, so that's, like, more my formal background, and
Yeah.
uh, then you and I messaged about the mindfulness too, but and then
Mhm.
yoga kinda took a back seat, and I would still say, like, I'm a practicing yogi in the sense of, like, mindfulness and meditation, and I do
Yeah.
more yin now, if you're familiar with that, or for anyone listening, that's, like, a much more restorative, like Ramwad, everyone knows
Mhm.
that, or pliability now. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, I just kinda I got pulled, really, that's all I can say is, like, I was pulled towards CrossFit and coaching and teaching, and then, like, just, things just opened up for me, and I've been really, really fortunate, but
Mhm.
So yeah, so and then it just became this like I remember during those times though, like I was struggling with some mental health issues around just kind of wasn't sure which
Mhm.
way I was going. COVID happened, and it was just a dark time for me. And then CrossFit, like, just was really physical, and
Mhm.
having like this goal and seeing the discipline for it really helped shape my life. So I see a lot of parallels, in our stories in that
Yeah.
sense, where it gives you like a yeah, I don't know how to say, kinda just like I wouldn't say it's my purpose, but it really it
Uh-huh.
helped shape the trajectory of my life, and similar to you, like, that's my big
Yeah.
why. It's like, I like working with competitors as my, like, number 1 client, but I also will work with
Mhm.
anyone as long as they care.
Yeah. No, for sure. I definitely think we have a lot of parallels. I started CCP. I'm still working on
Oh,
CCP.
yeah? Okay.
I started at the worst possible time. I started during the year that I got married and we got pregnant and I took over the gym.
Okay. Yeah.
It's been and I've done quite a few other courses. Like, I think we definitely both believe in ongoing education. I
Absolutely.
think I've heard you mention Active Life before. Like, I learned so much
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Active Life and their
Uh-huh.
assessments and Michael's stuff as well, but, like, I'm always learning and, one of the hardest lessons for me to learn in life is pacing, and it's ironic because, again, endurance is the thing that I'm always, like, trying to get better at.
Yeah.
Um, but but yeah, it's like pacing and understanding how much load I can handle. And yeah, with the mindfulness, when I was at College of Marin out here, I had a critical thinking class, and our assignment was to go and learn something that we knew nothing about. And so I attended like a night at Spirit Rock where they had a
Yeah.
intro meditation class,
That's so
and
cool.
ever since then, I've been practicing, and it's crazy, but it does a lot for, I mean, as you know, just for being able to pause and reflect on where your life is going. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge, and I think you had I don't know if you mentioned that on your recent story or one of
Mhm.
your posts, but, like, yeah, how it helps you reflect and, like, how am I showing up for the people in my life, and how am I showing up for myself, which I think is tremendous value to just yeah, just to be able to pause, and even for me, I found its help with, even like endurance, because endurance is so mental. As you know, we learned that
Yeah.
from Michael too, and I'm sure you're learning from your own training. So
Yeah.
much of endurance is like, can I stay engaged? Can I stay focused? There's this, you
Yep.
know,
I actually think that's why, I mean, I could be wrong, but I kind of theorize based on experience, just that a lot of people who, the old CrossFit Journal articles, the Met heads, the people who are addicted to Metcons, I
yeah,
believe
yeah,
why, right,
totally.
is because that might be the one time in their life where they're forced to be present and focused.
Yeah, yeah, it does. I mean, it gets you rooted in right here. So
Yeah,
oh, that's great. Oh, well, this is a perfect segue to what I wanted to ask you.
yeah,
Metcon, right, or conditioning,
uh-huh,
and you program for your gym, and you're an
I
affiliate,
do.
and in good standing, I'm assuming. So I recently, I'm going to put it back to you, but just give you context. I recently took over my gym's programming. We're not an affiliate currently, but we do CrossFit,
Mhm.
obviously. Uh-oh. But basically, and I've found it's really enriched me and helped me grow as a coach,
Yeah,
learning how to program for a group,
mhm,
whereas I would say my specialty was more individual design and private training. So I wanted to ask you how you approach and take these programming principles and then apply them
yeah.
to CrossFit.
I mean, it's so funny because in my mind, and this is gonna be a fun conversation because we are 2 individuals that have very similar experience, right? So,
Hmm.
I'm excited to see where this goes, but in my mind for a long time, I've separated the 2, right? I'm like, "Okay, this one needs to be more fun and engaging and motivating, and then this one has to be more, I guess, results driven. Like, it's not about how glitzy it is, but it's about how effective it is." And I kind of think that the 2 like avatars, right? One is like the person who's like, I won't work out on my own. I I almost like I don't like doing the same thing too much because I get bored and I need it to be fun and exciting and novel, right?
Hmm.
And the other side of it is like, I don't care what it is, I'll do it if it gets me where I wanna go and I wanna see those results. But what I've come to realize is, I mean, just like a lot of stuff Michael taught us, it really is a spectrum, right?
Hmm.
So Like, lately, for me, it's been meshing together in my brain a little bit better, and I try to do both. I find even, like, a lot of my individual clients, like, they enjoy variety and, like, their conditioning pieces,
Yeah, yeah.
but the strength progressions may stay consistent and the same for a period. Currently, the way I program for our affiliate, we do run cycles, do, like, I think, like, around an 8-week cycle, and it'll be about, um 3 to 4 weeks of practicing a skill and accumulating volume and then getting heavier
Mhm.
and then deloading and retesting. And the deload is usually just different movements that we haven't done, right? As opposed to like a traditional deload, but
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
it's a
More of the
traditional
mental,
deload.
yeah, the mental deload, sure.
Yeah, and, honestly, through as being a client for Michael, because Michael's been my coach, I think, for over a year again, and I learned so much from the way he programs, and I find, there's a way and actually, I don't know, like, I think there's a way to make it fun and engaging by slight variance, like, I think in CrossFit, hopefully I mean, we are an affiliate in good standing, and I am a level 3
Yeah,
CrossFit trainer.
yeah,
Hopefully this is not blasphemy, but what I gotta say is, like, I think constantly varied is one of the most misunderstood phrases because variance doesn't mean that everything has to change entirely or that has to be an insane variance, right? It can be very slightly, but slightly enough to produce an effect or for it to be engaging, but I don't think it has to be crazy. And I think a lot of the time, I know for me, certainly as a younger coach, when I would program, it would be more like a what are people gonna like and is it gonna entertain them?
yeah,
And less about how effective it is. And I actually at this point, I'm like, I refuse to program like that anymore. And it's like where there are places and I do try to listen to feedback and one of like the takeaways like I got from the course that we just took is like paying attention to what members are saying and what people are saying and how they're feeling and looking. And it's cool because I got both avatars and I have the people who are like, we just did like some tempo stuff for 3 weeks, and
yeah,
my wife is like my wife is both works with me. We raise our children together, we love each other,
yeah.
and she takes class every day, and she's like, "When are we done with the tempo stuff?"
Yeah,
So she'll tell me directly, right? And it's funny though, because then I also had members, I'm like checking in with them. I'm like, "Hey, how do you guys liking the tempo stuff? Are you getting bored with it yet?" Like, "No, this is great. Like, I can keep going." And so it's like it's funny because you got like two things can be true at the same time. And
right.
so I actually had it planned to go a little bit longer, but because of some of the feedback from my wife and a couple other members who also were like, "Yeah, like, this is really freaking hard." I was like, "Okay, let's look for another way to induce tension without the tempo." And then, so then we went to a heavier, we were doing like a single arm half kneeling strict press for reps. And we went to a barbell strict press for 4 reps and then 2 push press each set, right? And so like that was a good way I thought to induce tension and continue the progression without it having to be as so straightforward. And so I think that's what class programming teaches me is you can almost like hide the progression or it's almost more artistic flavor than it is like math and like
Yes.
individual design like can be more mathy than arts, but that's not true also. It's also kind of artistic. Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. Well, thanks for very validating. As you were saying, I was like, yeah, I do that. I do that. And, and again, I have to give credit to Jay. I hope he listens to this. If not, I'll just send it to him. But Jay is, he's become a very good friend of mine over the years and a business partner and a mentor and a coach. And him and I meet weekly. So it's his gym. And he actually came into ownership, kind of like around your story, around like 2020.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, and then I took over the programming, which thanks to him this year in like March, April. So I got like 9 months of doing it, and obviously Jay has had years of running affiliates and programming for affiliates. So he really has helped and nurtured that side of me where I brought more of like that kind of ID background, and he was like, "Here's how we do it," like, similar to your point. And I'm fortunate that him and I view programming the same way, similar to how you and I view it, right? It's like we love CrossFit. It doesn't need to beat people up all the time, right? Like that kind of is, I think, a misconception that people have of CrossFit. And how do we root it in sound principles? How do we make it
Mhm.
fun and engaging? And yeah, and making sure like it works. And we do something very similar, so I'm glad to hear that. Like, we'll weave in. It's not so blocked. Like if you look at like my training, it's very, very like Mondays back squat, Tuesdays snatch, and week over week with like the tiniest progression, which works for me
Mhm.
because I'm trying to get to the highest level in sport, and that's a little bit of different training. For our group class, yeah, same thing. We have a structure and we have a block. There is still variety. It's like hidden, which I love the way you articulated it. It's like artistic. Like we still will back squat week over week, but might be on different days. The tempo might change, but there's still back squatting, and we're still moving it up, and we're still challenging the tempo or the reps or the load. We'll also have a couple of focuses for the blocks. Like this, most recent one was handstand push-ups. Instead of it like every Tuesday is handstand push-ups, you're going to do 1 rep and then 2 reps, which could be a little boring. It'll be like maybe we do kipping, and then this one we try the wall walk with the wall facing, and so
Yeah.
exactly to your point, I think that's art. Like the artistry is what makes it works, and yeah, and the constantly varied. And as someone who's like, I'm team CrossFit all the way, so is Jay,
Mhm.
and I the same thing. But it's like using your critical thinking hat. Like, how do we keep
Yeah.
the beauty of constantly varied and high intensity, but make it work and make it
Yeah.
engaging? And we do the same thing. Like I try to solicit feedback from people. I always joke. I'm like, if you like it, tell me. If you don't like it, don't tell me. But people, I'm very fortunate our members trust me and Jay, and they'll tell me,
Yeah.
or they'll ask,
For
which is
sure.
usually a sign they want to change it. Like, hey, when are we gonna do something do something else? I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, got
Yeah.
feedback received. We've seen great progress, like lots of PRs,
Mhm.
and people really
Yeah.
engaged in the training. It's great to hear how you do it. I'm
Mhm.
always, as you know, I'm always learning. I love to see how successful affiliates do it because I know I can get better at it.
Mhm.
And vice versa. Also, to your point, like it's made my individual design program, I think, a bit
Mhm.
more flavorful and fun because I was like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, like it doesn't need to be like exact progression to like let's just tweak one thing. It's like it really
Yeah.
is the artistry of like, okay, yeah, like group class will be definitely a little bit more variety, but
Mhm.
still like how do we get that progression and progressive overlay? And then ID is like going to be extremely or almost purposefully progressive overload, but then like
Mhm.
how do we add that variety? So I
Yeah.
think that's great.
Yeah. I think one of the cool things, like I really enjoy the time when it comes time to plan like the next cycle, and I love to change it, right? I love to change
Yeah.
like doing things a certain way. Like this cycle, in our gym, we really have a lot of non-competitors, and and it's funny because we're not opposed to competition. I understand the value in
Uh-huh.
competition. I think, my brief time training as a competitor served me a lot for my mindset for life and business. But most of our people are everyday folks that have high life stress, right?
Yeah.
And careers and kids and all kinds of things. And so this cycle, I really planned on people being inconsistent, and I planned on, kind of not adding more stress than they already have. And we also have like 4 really fun gym benchmarks. One is this weekend. It's called Norman. It's a workout one of our former coaches wrote for his dad, who was a POW in Vietnam. And, that's something we look forward to every year. Andy's wife, Karen, we have a workout for her coming up on the 27th. They're one of the founders of the gym. We have our 12 days of Dark Horse, we call it, because
Yeah.
the Dark Horse is our gym logo. And so and I also have a coach who has a birthday workout. So we have a birthday workout for all of our current coaches that we do. If they're on staff, we're doing it every year. And so there comes this natural like variance, and all of a sudden it's gonna feel really different for the next few weeks. And then when it comes time to the open, we're gonna have a lot more variance because that's what's gonna be needed for the open. So I really do enjoy that part of planning and thinking. And it's like, okay, you guys think that feels like this? Like, well, now it's gonna feel like this, right?
Yeah.
That keeps it engaging as well.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I gotta get some of those hero workouts or benchmarks because
Yeah.
we're similar. We have our gym, I would say, definitely has a military background, not from myself, but Jay's family, and just kind of almost everyone in Jay's family, I think, served in the military. And
Mhm.
we make that a point in our programming, and we do a lot of work for Veterans Day, and just bringing awareness to those causes. And so we have what we call like our Red Friday season. So Red stands for Remember Everyone Deployed,
Okay.
because right, 'cause it could be really easy to forget that. Part of that is we try to weave in a hero workout once a week. So with that, With that being said, if you have a hero workout or something where it's like a tribute WOD, I always
Yeah,
try to put that into our program, especially as a friend in like a greater CrossFit space. Like I think that's just also one of the cool things about CrossFit is like
for
someone
sure.
came in our gym and they dropped in, like we could be doing the same workout as you guys,
Yeah.
or that's a conversation for another time. But I love that, and I think
Mhm.
that's really helpful. Also, same thing, we do it for birthdays, and we try to make it as fun and engaging as possible while still honoring principles. And the last thing I'll say on that is because it was great points from you. You
Mhm.
just kind of got my head spinning. Yeah, remembering that when you're programming for CrossFit, and this is a bias that I've had to challenge myself, is most of these people aren't trying to get to the level I'm trying to get to. And that's
Yeah.
okay. And it shouldn't be that way. And
No.
remembering that and remembering they have stress and family and kids and Christmas and Hanukkah and New Year's, like it's hard for people to train. So I've also tried to make the training reflect that. And especially like after a holiday break or like after a couple of days of the gym being closed, like I was like, maybe we'll do some like unilateral work and not
Yeah,
smash, because
for sure.
they're probably not eating well and which is fine.
Mhm.
But so I think that's also
Yeah.
the mastery of it, which I thank you for bringing that up around like, yeah, just keeping that in mind. And then I have one more question for you before we switch into
Mhm.
the course. If you wouldn't
Mhm.
mind sharing, you had shared we were on the call yesterday with the group as like
Yeah.
a post feedback, and you shared that you're, working on the compassion side for yourself and
Mhm.
on this sentiment. So, how does that, because what you said was great. It's like, and I resonated with it as well. It's like, for me, I'm like, I don't really have that compassion as much as I'd like to versus for some, like for the members, I'm like, of course, it makes total sense. The holidays.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm getting at or what I'm asking you?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure,
Okay.
I do, and I gotta say, like, I don't know if you could see it, but that's our leading value as a gym,
Compassion.
compassion.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and one thing I tried to do when I became, second owner of the gym is I didn't try to create new values, I tried to look at the things that Annie and Karen had kinda already, created for us in our community, and it is a very special community, like, I'm sure Hudson River Athletics is, right? Like, I met my
Yeah.
wife there,
Wow.
and, there's been many families that have come out of that gym. But, it's funny too because compassion gets a bad rap because everyone thinks it's soft, but I actually think compassion is hard, right? Compassion isn't just like going like, "Oh, I feel sorry for you." Compassion is like, "Hey, I see your pain and let's go and do something about it. I'm gonna hold your hand and guide you through this, right? We're gonna go do the work together." And so that's why it's one of our leading values. And I actually think it's so integral to I mean, it's integral to being a human because, like, as you know from your background with yoga and mindfulness, like, the one thing that's true about this world is it's gonna be hard for everyone no matter who you are. I don't care who you are. Like, some people think like, "Oh, like, maybe, they're financially challenged and, they think that the rich person has it easier." One of the cool things about, working in this field is working with all kinds of people from different walks of life and intimately, and you get to know that everyone is going through some hard shit. And so,
Yeah.
compassion is what keeps you going when you have those hard times. And for myself, when it comes to training, or I just made a post about it today, the difference between workout people and non-workout people, right? So the person that's like, man, the holidays hit. I guess I fell off the wagon. I'll start up again one day. And the person who's like, okay, it's hard right now, but I'm going to keep going when I can, that's compassion right there, right? That's not giving up. And so for myself, when I talked on the call, I mentioned right now it's like really hard for me to get workouts in. Whereas like, last month I was doing everything Michael sent me and sending it back to him, not missing anything. And like for the last like 3 weeks, I've had this progression from him, which is like a 5K run, 10 repeats, and then another 5K run. And I
Ooh.
have not done the second 5K run in
You
like
cut it
3 weeks,
short?
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm just like, that's all I have time for today. I want to
Sure.
take my daughter to school, right? And like, my daughter received an award today at school, and I'm like, yeah, I'm
Oh,
going to prioritize
congratulations.
that, right?
Yeah, of
Thank
course.
you. So like, it's just honoring that. That's the time, but also like I did something, I did the best I could do for today, the best I wanted to do today, right? And that's okay, being okay with that. Whereas, probably a year ago, to be honest, like I don't remember exactly what my training sessions were like, but I do know before I have been of the mindset, well, if I can't finish it, then I'm not gonna start it, I'm gonna push it off, right? And then if that perfect time doesn't come, then I may not get to it. And that's been one of my life lessons that I've learned a lot is EC Sinkowski from Optimize Me Nutrition.
Mhm.
So I took one of her coaching courses and I love this quote. She said, all or nothing is often more nothing than all, right? And I'm like, that's so true.
I like
Like,
that. Yeah.
so that's kind of reframed how I look at things. I think it's a really important lens to have as a coach who coaches everyday people is like people are going to struggle and they're going to beat themselves up for not being able to be perfect. And you just have to remind them like no one is perfect. Part of why I value our groups when we get together and talk as coaches is just hearing the similar struggles and be like, oh,
Yeah.
that's normal, right? That's not just me. That's a very normal thing to go through because sometimes in the background it feels really messy and I'm like, am I a real coach? Am I doing this? Like,
Yeah.
like it's like,
They're gonna find out, right?
yeah, for sure. So, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's awesome. I mean, I feel like too. It's like that's what you had again. You had mentioned this too. I believe it was in your testimonial for
Mhm.
Michael's course, and you had said it becoming a better coach is like intertwined with becoming a better human. And
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I remember you said that. I was like, yeah, it's spot on. And I think that's like this. It is an interplay. It's an interplay of it's not just learning. I call it like the X and O's, right? Like
Mhm.
this is how you coach and here's how you write a
Yeah.
split. Like anyone could not anyone, but like seriously, like you could even get like chat GPT to do that nowadays. So like
Yeah.
obviously that's an important part of coaching, but developing the person as the coach and like like you had just said, I think that's what makes it transformational is because you will the people you come in contact with will feel that and then they'll be like, oh,
Mhm.
like I'm not like I didn't mess up, I'm not a failure. I'm gonna stay with this. Because that's the
Yeah.
goal, right? With like almost besides like my hyper competitive clients who you have to be like slow
Mhm.
down. For most people, it's like you want to help facilitate their training. You're not doing it
Mhm.
for them. You're not like being a parent, like, come on, you better do your training. It's more of
Yeah.
just like checking in and guiding them and moving them towards that training. So I love that compassion, and I think like the way it was explained to me,
Mhm.
compassion is not sympathy. Like you're not
Mhm.
like, oh, I feel so bad for you. It's more
Yeah.
like empathy and understanding and meeting the person where they're at. And
Mhm.
I'll be honest too, like a lot of times I have to I sometimes want that same compassion from my clients, who you said, because I may make a mistake or I may
Yeah.
drop the ball, not intentionally, but it
Mhm.
happens. So I think it just is like, these are great conversations to have, and we kinda, like, raise, like, that coaching collective together.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people, a lot of everyday people, the thing they have a hard time with when it comes to doing the work, like you said, the work is easy to figure out, right? It's like if you want to run a marathon and you're at a certain starting place, there's a way to do it. And there's probably a couple ways or a few ways, there's lots of ways, but there's going to be an amount and kind of work that you should do for that. But most people, in my experience that I see out there, they start off going too hard and then they can't
Right.
sustain that, right? And when they can't sustain that, then they quit. And so that's where I think a good coach comes in to be like, let's take all of your circumstances into account and go from there. And unless it's about compassion,
Yeah. That's great. It's great.
being a parent, I think, well, I guess it may not be true for all parents, but hopefully being a parent, you develop some compassion and you grow because I remember I was telling one of my clients this yesterday, one of my personal training clients. When my daughter was born, I used to be very strict. I used to tell my wife, she can't be on the floor when I'm training personal training. Like, we're not that kind of gym. We're a top end gym. And, no food on the floor. And and slowly, I just kind of let go. And this last weekend, we did we're like beta testing a lot of different services right now that we plan on releasing in the new year. And one of them is like an experience because we've always been the gym where like, we do a consult with you, OPEC style, where we sit down, we deep dive into who you are and why you're here. From there, we do some one-on-one training and then we get you in the classes long term if that's right for you or individual design or more personal training. But what I've realized is a lot of people, we shut out a lot of people because of the commitment, right? It's a big commitment to ask of people. And alternatively, I don't want to be a free class gym because most of the
Mm,
time that doesn't work, right? At least in my experience.
yeah,
There's a lot of those out there. And so we're doing this thing, we call it like a CFN experience, where we have groups or individuals come in for a class. And we did our first class, which was a women's intro to weightlifting.
I saw that.
And
Yeah,
yeah, it was a member who has these 4 friends that live around the Bay Area, not near us, but, she wanted them to experience strength training, and so we did it, and it was Saturday morning, and I don't know what Saturday morning's like at Hudson, but
yeah,
here we have kids and babies all over the place, and, we have a kids area, a dedicated kids area where they can hang out, but they're always, like, in the back room, like, running around, swinging on ropes, and
sure.
like I know there's on the one side, like, well, we are pretty safe about it, and I know it's something to think about as an owner, but it's so much better to me than having them sit still on iPads, and it's like crazy because like they want to move when they see their parents move, and so we embrace it. It's part of our culture, and they were running around behind the strength class with these
Mhm.
women. And then my wife got him out of the way, and I was like, "Oh man, I hope that didn't bother them." Well, like, the feedback we got back was like, "That was such a great class, was such a welcoming environment." Having the kids there really helped the ladies feel at home because they're all mom. And, so in our leadership chat yesterday, I was joking. I was like, "Maybe we should just call ourselves, Dogs and Babies, a high-end training experience." Like, that's gonna be the name of our gym.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I love that. I mean, that's a perfect kind of like segue too. Like, which I love how how this conversation panned out. We had an idea and we got there, but I love
Yeah.
learning more about like how this conversation came to be, and basically it was predicated off of our shared experience going through the fitness coach mastery, and I think
Mhm.
that exactly what you just shared, where like going with it and being like, oh, let's gonna see what happens. Like, let's try let the kids run around with the moms or strength training is part of that mastery. And I would say, for those listening, like, I think we all had our own preconceived ideas of what this was going to be, or what I thought the
Yeah.
course was going to be, and it was so much more in the
Mhm.
best way. And like the story you just shared is that's a form of mastery. Like you're kind of like to me, it's like you're meeting the situation and you're using your best appraisal skills to be like, oh well, I know it should be this way, but
Yeah.
here's what's actually occurring.
Mhm.
And there were so many things that I really appreciated from the course too, and we kind of talked about it already. No accidents, but like we talked about the compassion, and I don't know if Michael had it as compassion, but it was more. He talked about the other injury that when you're
Yeah.
training clients and individuals, and we work with people, the other injury are those mental things that we don't see, and
Yep.
how that's a huge part of working with clients and or
Mhm.
even group, right? Like maybe someone's in a group and you're the group class coach or leader, and that that person's going through some stuff like you had just said, like, but they don't tell you about it, and it's like maybe on that
Yeah.
day or that week you kind of leave them alone, like you don't shut them
Yep.
out, but like you're not going to be on their back or be like really,
Mhm.
you're meeting them where they're at. So yeah,
Mhm.
I don't really have it in a sense of like a particular topic, excuse me, on that mastery. Yeah, I felt like it was so eye opening, and then like the skill development. We can even chat about that. But yeah, just
Yeah.
curious, yeah, how you felt walking into the course and then coming out of it.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, walking into the course, I just when I'm on the email list, and when I got the email about the new course, I was like, "I gotta sign up for that. That's gonna make my life better." Like,
Yeah,
that's my initial thought, and I was just so excited for it, and, like, yeah, like, as you know, because I share it, like, I'm pretty transparent, like, I got a pretty busy schedule, but I'm like, "I'm gonna carve out the time for that," and so we did, and going in, like, the first couple weeks, I was like, "Yeah, this is, like, everything I believe," but, distilled, and, it's like like you said, stuff but you may not, I guess, bring to the forefront of your consciousness. Like, you're not like know it, but you're not like sitting there writing it down or writing it out. It's just things you think of, right? And so that's what it felt like for the first couple weeks. And then going into like the adaptation parts, like everything is wrong.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
but also like I could see it being that, but also it wasn't that. It was more just like, you know it was more freeing. It was less everything you know is wrong and more that's like a joke, but
Yeah, yeah, of course.
it was more things aren't 1 plus 1 equals 2, right? And
Right.
that was freeing because it's kind of like there isn't really a right or wrong way to do this. And like I fully believe that there isn't a right or wrong way, but there is what works for the person you're training, right? What works for the individual is what it comes down to. And so to me, that was pretty freeing. And it actually really helped with marrying the class and the individual programming for me. Like I was like, yeah, like um, the person who is just here moving and doesn't actually care about progression and stuff, like that's okay. It's okay for them to be that and to be here in our community and I'm gonna have compassion for them and let them be. And at the same time, for me, I'm gonna infuse the programming with hopefully something that helps them get results at the same time because that's important to me, right? And so I think this course really helped the two to mesh in my mind better. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I think well, that just kind of it picks up on the story you shared about the kids, right? And the
Hmm.
female weight. Like that's you're meeting them where they're at. And for me too, like it's just this is all stuff I need to hear too, because it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, how do we get those people involved too? And they may never have those goals, and that's totally fine, but they love our
Yeah.
gym and we're very community driven. So that's a great reminder of me for me. So
Hmm.
thank you of like, yeah, how do I make them feel included, and how do I do my best to move us in the same direction, and their wants and needs
Yeah.
might be different, and then how we coach them might be different, but they're still they're
Hmm.
still there, and I think that's a great reminder of like, well, coach the person in front of you. On that note, which is really the one of the last things I wanted to ask you about was we talked about skill acquisition at the towards
Hmm.
the latter weeks of the seminar, and without going into the science of it, I think all of us, like I can't speak for us, but
Yeah.
we all had our perceptions or our paradigm shifted and
Hmm.
challenged around, maybe, and I was guilty of this growing up as someone who used to coach tennis lessons in college, and then I taught yoga, and then I coached running, and now I'm in personal training and coaching class. Like the coach has like I have the answers, and I'm gonna like it's my job to teach this
Yeah.
person how to do it, and I'm gonna like be on them and like constantly correct them. And I don't think I was being a helicopter coach by any means, but
Hmm.
it basically the idea is
Hmm.
that, when people and we'll put this in CrossFit lens, is a client is learning a skill, one of the best ways for them to learn a skill is through their own awareness and their own
Yeah.
experience and their own
Yeah.
doing. Us as the coaches, we're not expert. Oh, we give we should be seen as a guide and a facilitator rather than
Hmm.
I'm the coach with the answer, which I think is something we might all know, but we
Hmm.
were like, well, it's my job. They're paying me. I need to make sure I'm coaching them, and like kind of grappling with that idea of like, as long as I'm intervening when is necessary, and not
Hmm.
too much, not too little, but
Yeah.
ultimately like letting the client figure it out on their own. But you don't want to,
Yeah.
you're not aloof to them, and you're not like turning
Yeah.
your back. You're just like, okay, try again. Let's do a couple more reps, or maybe like elbows in a little bit, like a very small cue, and then letting them figure it out. So that was our experience, and it's something that
Hmm.
we wanted to talk about. And then and I'll let Michael explain for himself, but he said that you said you've been using that same principle with your kids
Yeah.
and your parenting and your business, right, with your leaders and your team and your coaches. So yeah, like which is cool, like how did you take that concept of skill development, this new framework, and apply it to your
Yeah.
life?
Yeah. I mean, it's really funny, right? Because we do like in the seminar, he talked about how I forget which book it was, but it was one of the books on coaching, how like there's just these common stereotypes that we've become conditioned to just accept. And like, yeah, the coach is the one with all the answers and has the way. And there are many ways, right? And I did get the Move book. I've been seeing you post about it
Yeah.
and I've been reading it. And last night I was reading it and like I was reading about like the fact that when runners have more variability in their body, like when they're running, they're less likely to be injured. And so
Yes.
more variability is less injury. And so like that really flies in the face of the perfect form. And like I shared on the wrap up call, my biggest takeaway that skill acquisition is really about creating the right opportunities for people to practice and learn themselves. And like for me, for programming, like this week, I'll probably post it on my story this week. I'm gonna start posting like one class workout every week that I really liked. I made a workout where it was like a few reps of bar muscle up. I think it was like 3 to 5 bar muscle ups, or kipping hips to bar, or a jump to support, depending on what level you did. Then max cal row, and that's in a 2-minute window, 2-minute
Yeah,
rest.
yeah, sure,
And
sure.
then the next section was some wall walks or a plank, and then 2-minute rest or handstand walking. And then the last section was like a burpee box jump over, push-ups plus box jumps, and then row and then rest, and for 3 sets. And that was a really fun design because it allowed people enough time to explore the movement. After the rest, they were fresh, they weren't fatigued, and it was just enough for me to play around with when to give them a cue and when to coach and when to let them just move. And I think, again, like one of the things I'm learning when it comes to not just programming, but also like on the floor coaching is when it isn't a simple answer, like 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 2, that's when it's an art form. And so that's something is like, how much coaching versus too much coaching. And I think that's just an art that you have to refine based on the person that's in front of you. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And then how did you take that, if you don't mind me asking and sharing, and now applying that with your coaches, like in your business? I think you said like you had
Yeah.
meetings and then you you missed the meeting. I don't know if that was on purpose or
Oh, yeah.
not.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, so we have a very small number of coaches right now,
Mm.
but our leadership team, so we have our staff of, I think we're like at 6 or 7, coaches, 6, 7, right? 6, 7.
Yes.
You know about the 6, 7?
Yeah, of course.
My 2-year-old says that now.
Yeah,
So,
of
uh,
course.
yeah, so anyways, we have, 6 or 7 coaches, and then the leadership team is myself, my wife, and one of our other coaches, and we meet every week. And I missed a meeting for the course, and during the time that I missed that meeting, we'd planned out our year-end or our next year goals, like, a month ago, and they
Mhm.
just took that and started working on stuff, and I missed the meeting, like, "Okay, here's all the stuff we talked about at the meeting." I was like, "Holy cow, this is great."
Yeah.
And it just kinda taught me, like, and I was back at our leadership meeting yesterday, but it just kinda taught me that, yeah, people are very resourceful, and if you will allow them opportunities to practice, they will figure stuff out. And same as a parent, like, you wanna, like, you know, it's very tempting to wanna bubble wrap your kid and not allow them to get hurt or experience sadness or pain or any of those things, but that's how we learn. My kids are always climbing and jumping, and my 2-year-old, the other day when we went to pick up her sister, she kept climbing up on a picnic table and then jumping off. And, I think one thing I thought about saying earlier is knowing when to coach versus pull back is like
Mhm.
when someone asks for help, right? If they ask you for your and some clients will ask for that a lot more, and you may need to teach them, like, cool, like, I know you probably want my help, but I'm going to allow you to do this on your own for a little bit and see what you get out of it. What did you get out of it?
Mhm.
But yeah, so my daughter was asking me to hold her hand, and then she would jump off, and she's 2, right? And it looks really crazy to see a 2-year-old jump off a picnic table
Yeah.
on her feet and start laughing. and and it was all good till she tried to head dive off of it, and I was like, okay, that's too much.
Yeah, then you intervene.
Yeah,
That's great. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's what this path I'm learning is all about. I don't have kids, but
mhm,
I have plenty of clients and I coach daily besides like Sunday. But yeah,
mhm,
I think it's really this never-ending process of refinement, and I think a
right,
part of it is having these conversations and putting
yeah,
yourself in the education in the courses, and then ultimately, like, just like we want our clients to go figure it out, like for me and you
mhm,
to figure it out. And I know Michael would say the same thing. He'd be like, I can tell you, but I want you to do it. And that's something
yeah,
I've worked on myself, is like, instead of reflexively reaching out, like, Michael, help me, like,
yep,
Austin, you can figure this out. And like,
yeah,
or like, try it. And then if I get stuck
mhm,
or if I need a little guidance, same thing with Jay, same thing. Show the initiative and try to take the programming the direction I think he wants it to go, and I feel good with. And then, but when I get stuck or if I'm like, can you help me?
yeah,
You do grow in those moments, but at least you're, like what you were just saying, like, I'm at least growing in that kind of discomfort and that uncertainty.
yeah,
I'm
Yeah,
doing it. I'm doing it. And then like you always know like that person's there for help.
for sure. Do you know like the Enneagram at all? Have you explored that?
No, what is that?
It's like this is a very simplified, reduced way of saying it. There's people that are like super into it. There's these books, there's courses, but Brianna, my first ID coach, had me do
Mhm.
it to kind of understand my personality. And like
Oh,
I'm a helper is like my main thing is like I want to help. And the second thing I am is an individualist. I want to be kind of different than what most people are.
yeah.
And anyway, so I share that to say that, the last few years in trying to figure out how to build this thing I'm building here, we're building here, is I have kind of siloed a lot of the work with like there's programming. I used to put these super detailed notes and do all this stuff and want it to be a certain way. And I'm learning to let go of some of that a bit. And another way I'm implementing it with our coaches is like we do have an assessment. We start off with each member that comes in, so we kind of treat that part, call it onboarding, but we treat it more ID like
Uh,
than like than a typical foundation session for CrossFit.
mhm.
So we measure things and we'll try to, uh, see how people do in a year or two if they're here. And anyhow, I just revised the assessment, but for coach development this week, we're taking a break until the new year so that everyone could just enjoy the sleepiness of winter.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I put in our Slack, I was like, "All right, guys, so, like, here's a case study. Here's this person. They have these goals. What are 5 tests you would choose for them?" And I'm gonna see what everyone says, and, there may be something in there that I haven't thought about that we can add into the assessment. And so just allowing everyone to contribute more, I guess, is something that I'm learning to do. Again, just believing that people are resourceful and whole, and I'm also a DAP certified health coach through the Kresser Institute. It's a certification I used to do, and truly I haven't done a lot with that certification, but it did teach me a lot about mindfulness and coaching, not just fitness or health coaching, but coaching in general.
The whole person,
And
yeah.
yeah, and so it's a big part of how I think about it. And when we were talking earlier about the coach needing to be the expert, I used to say, and maybe this was like when I was younger and just starting off, maybe I was more naive, but to some degree, I almost feel like a coach cannot fully know about the thing that a person is trying to do, but a good coach can ask that person the right questions to evoke the answers because any good coach I've had, whether it's business or fitness or you name it, that's what they do is they have you come to your own conclusions and aha moments. And then it's like the answers, but you kind of need someone to make you sit
Uh,
there and think about it and draw it out. Right.
yeah. I love that. Well, I think that's I'm not gonna say the Latin phrase because I'm gonna botch it, but I'm pretty
Uh,
sure that's where the word educate comes from. Like it
interesting.
means in Latin, you guys can quote check this. To draw out is the
Mhm.
is like the root word from Latin, which is exactly what I think we're trying to do as teachers, as educators, as coaches and vice versa. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's great, man. I mean, I think that's a great place to stop. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that you would like to add or, yeah, like to mention that we didn't talk about?
No, I think one thing when you were talking about your journey earlier and I was sharing my journey, they are very different, but I think
Mm,
one commonality that I want to just point out and appreciate is the fact that we've led different lives, right? Like I think it's so cool that as humans we change over the years and we have the capacity to change, but sometimes when we feel stuck, if you've never done that, you don't realize that. And I think that's such a powerful lens to bring into coaching people. Because my favorite part of the health and fitness coaching is really what people do outside the gym and how it adds to their life outside the gym.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So
Yeah.
where can people find you in you're about 30 minutes outside San Francisco is where your gym
Yeah.
is?
Yeah, we're in Novato, California, and I'm also I do train a few people remotely. I'm looking to expand on that more in the new year. So
Get out into
Instagram's a good
space.
place too. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
man, yeah. Well, we'll put
yeah.
this out there. I mean, it'll be on YouTube and Spotify. And then for those of you that are still listening, thank you for listening. And then, Michael, once again, I appreciate your time. And maybe we'll do this again. And then hopefully I'll come meet you in person soon.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, Austin.
All right.